Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar organized by IFAD and WorldFish and our other partners. I'm Richard Abila, Senior Technical Specialist for Fisheries and Aquaculture at IFAD, based in IFAD headquarters in Rome, Italy. I'll be the moderator for today's session of this webinar. Today we'll be discussing a subject that has a big bearing on the future of aquaculture, the issue of climate change and aquaculture, how we respond and adapt our production system in a world of increasingly changing climate. We are aware that this topic is getting increasing attention in different forums across the world, and ours is one such platform. IFAD and WorldFish with other partners are working together to improve the resilience and the livelihoods of communities dependent on aquaculture through climate-smart aquaculture technologies and practices. The aim of this webinar is to share knowledge and experiences from the field on some of the advances in this subject. I'll take a few minutes to take you through the agenda of today's webinar. The next session, we are going to have introduction to our housekeeping procedures. Then I will have a short introduction giving a context of our work on climate smart aquaculture technologies and practices. This will be followed by a short video to give some introduction to the next session, which will be two panel sessions. I'll introduce the panelists in each case, and then from there we'll go to Q&A session where we'll invite participants to give to have some questions which the panelists can respond to. We'll give an explanation of how that will be done during our housekeeping session, and then after that we'll have closing remarks and then end the session. Now, we expect that the total session will take 1.5 hours, and we welcome you to join us in this active session. So, without taking much time, I'm going to invite Anis Khalid, the communications officers and events at WorldFish, to take us through the housekeeping rules of the webinar. Welcome, Anis. Please.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much, Richard, for that lovely introduction. So I'm the communications officer from WorldFish, and today I'll just be taking you through some housekeeping rules for today's webinar. So on your screen right now, you can see some instructions. Because this is a webinar for non-speaking attendees, your cameras and microphones will be switched off by default. This is to avoid any disruptions to the speakers. And then just so you know, this event is being recorded and screenshots will be taken for promotional purposes only. And last but not least, please submit your questions via the Q&A box and your comments via the chat box in the Zoom control pane at the bottom of your screen. So we will address the questions by you to the speakers from Richard during the Q&A session. So thank you so much. I'm passing the floor back to Richard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannes, for that quick explanation of our housekeeping procedures. Our fellow participants, we all appreciate the role aquaculture continues to play as a critical food source for the world's growing population. At the moment, we know that aquaculture is producing almost more than half of the aquatic animal products consumed. In a world facing increasing hunger and malnutrition, more people in poverty and youth unemployment crisis, there's going to be more pressure to expand aquaculture to meet these needs. Climate change poses one of the biggest challenges in fisheries and aquaculture, worsening the vulnerability of aquatic food systems, causing loss in productivity, and putting at stake the livelihoods of billions of people who are dependent on aquatic resources. At IFAD, we have first-hand experience with some of our aquaculture projects, which have had devastating effects of climate change in some of the most extreme circumstances. In 2019, in March 2019, a strong tropical cyclone, it was named Cyclone Idai, occurred along the southwest Indian Ocean basin, accompanied with strong winds and severe flooding, affecting several countries, and particularly Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Madagascar, and Malawi. At that time, IFAD had aquaculture programs in Mozambique, working with rural vulnerable communities in some of the districts most affected by this cyclone. At the end of the cyclone, 500 farmers had lost over 450 fish ponds, 200 fish cages, and about 700,000 fish from their ponds and cages. This single event amounted to a loss of over 200 tons of fish and a total cost of damage estimated at nearly $1 million US dollars directly borne by farmers. For poor vulnerable farmers in rural areas, this matters a lot. Obviously, this is one spectacular climate event, but we could find many others of at different levels across the world. There has been significant increase in the frequency, intensity, and severity of extreme climate events in many parts of the world, including cyclones, as I mentioned, variable rainfall patterns, floods, droughts, among others. These incidences worsen the vulnerability of aquatic food systems and the lives dependent on them through loss in productivity and causing fluctuation in income and food prices. The recent COP26 starkly reminded us that with increasing global house gas emissions, the situations will not get any better, certainly not in the short term, unless urgent and concrete action is taken. Changing precipitation, temperature, and climate patterns affect the quantity, quality, and seasonality of water resources, leading to inevitable effect of our aquaculture production. Erratic rainfall patterns, floods, and droughts mean that we must improve how we manage and use available water resources. We must be smart. Therefore, it is critical to identify pathways to advance the growth of climate-friendly practices. Aquaculture systems that optimize water use efficiencies and adapted to different environmental conditions are among the solutions. IFAD is supporting a project called Advancing Climate Smart Aquaculture Technologies, partnering with IFAD, with WorldFish, with partners in Ethiopia and Eritrea to find some of these solutions. Today, we are going to learn from WorldFish on their work on improved technologies and practices to address the current and emerging challenges. The focus will be on two production systems: Integrated Aquaculture-Agriculture System, what is abbreviated as IAA, and Improved Pond Raceway Aquaculture System, IPRS. These systems enable intensification of production, efficient use of natural resources and nutrients, reusing waste such as pond water and mud as fertilizer in the ponds. To take us through these topics are two distinguished experts in this field working with us on this project. And I will now take time to introduce our first panelist, who is Professor Abdel-Fattah El Said. Professor Abdel is an Emirate Professor of Fish Biology, Fisheries and Aquaculture at Alexandria University. He received his PhD degree in aquaculture from Michigan State University, USA in 1987. Currently, he is a professor in Oceanography Department, Faculty of Science, Alexandria University in Egypt. He has also served as visiting professor to scientific institutions in Japan, Spain, Malaysia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Sultanate of Oman. He has several publications, 4 books on this in the area of expertise. and he has served as an aquaculture and fisheries consultant for several organizations. So let me take this chance to invite Professor Abdel-Fattah to take us through his past presentation on integrated aquaculture-agriculture system. Professor Abdel, welcome.
Thank you very much, Richard. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Let me first thank the IFAD and WorldFish for organizing this very important event. And thanks go to Richard, Ahmed, and Anis for their efforts. Let's start because I don't have enough time, so let's share the screen. The title is Integrated Aquaculture-Agriculture with emphasis on Egypt. So I will go in a general context at first, and then on Egypt first, and then I will go probably skimming over some other examples in other countries and our region. And hopefully the time will allow me to do that. Why we are talking about integrated agriculture, aquaculture in the region? I think Richard has mentioned a few points on the effect of climate change on aquaculture and on urban activities in general. So back to Egypt. Egypt, as you all know, is mostly desert with the lowest percentage of agricultural land, which is only 3% of the total area of the country. And agriculture consumes most of the water that we have. The population is increasing, meaning that the pressure is increasing. And it's expected that the already scarce water will be facing more challenges in the future. Also in other countries in the region, the NENA countries, Near East and North African countries, are facing the same challenges. Okay, so what is the impact effect of climate change? Like Richard said, there is a debate over the impact of climate change, especially in Egypt. There are some debates that Egypt will be most affected, especially the Delta region, because it's a lowland. So this is expected to affect the agricultural cycles, the cropping maps, seawater intrusion is likely to happen, flooding, like Richard said, losing existing aquaculture sites. So the impact, if it happens, will be tremendous. This is just a table showing the land in Egypt, total land and cultivated land, and the total agricultural land or cultivated land is only 3.7% of the total land, like I said. For the water, we have the total water volume in Egypt received is 80 billion cubic meter, okay? Most of them, which is 55 billion from the Nile. And our demand is 114 billion cubic meter. This simply means that we will need 33.7 more billion cubic meter, which is about 30% of what we have already now. This is an indication that we are going to face, like I said, a huge challenge. So what does this mean? It means that better use and responsible management of water resources is becoming a necessity. It's becoming imperative. This would increase the efficiency of water usage, okay, and to ensure the wise use of the amount of water that we already have. This also means that alternative practices, such as reuse of the wastewater, okay, and new policies to manage the water are also very necessary in order to manage this scarce water wisely. So the integration of aquaculture with other agricultural and rural activities is an ideal solution, it's an ideal option for facing this challenge. And that's why this important topic is now we are talking about. What is integrated aquaculture? To those who are not familiar with the term, it's simply farming fish and other aquatic organisms with land crops, either animal or plants, using using the available inputs, the local inputs, where one input of one system can be used as an output, or sorry, one output of the output of one system can be used as input to the other system, so that it's like a cycle. We are circulating or cycling our resources. And this can diversify the products. We can have double cropping. This system is an economically feasible, no environmental impacts, very environmentally friendly. So finally, this system can enhance the livelihood and reduce poverty from of the rural societies. And this is actually a very important target of projects like the one we are talking about now. Now, integrated aquaculture system can be applied or adopted in these 7 systems. We can apply rice fish farming, wheat with fish, fish with vegetables, fish with animal, and then integrated aquaculture in the desert using the same systems. We have aquaponic, and finally we have integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, IMTA. But we will focus on the integrated aquaculture system in Egypt, like I said, and other NENAC regions, Northeast, Near East and North African countries. Okay. The first system which is widely applied in Egypt is rice fish farming. And interestingly to mention that it is globally a very important agricultural heritage system. According to the FAO development program, they declared that rice fish farming is globally important agricultural heritage system. This means that it's quite important, and it's deeply rooted in several countries, especially in Southeast Asia. And in this system, we can practice monoculture, like only one species, like tilapia, for example. We can put more than one species in a polyculture system. Sometimes we can add fertilizers to the feed or not. We can add feed or not, or we can add both. In Egypt and in most of the countries applying this system, tilapia and carps are probably the most important and most popular species farmed. Sometimes they add some other species like catfish, for example. And stocking densities varies significantly from country to other and from area to another. But about 1,000 to 5,000 fish per hectare is generally documented. And the results are very controversial, but the production of this system is about 200 to 1,000 kilogram per hectare or even more. And this amount is quite significant in countries, in poor countries. If you have 200 kilograms in addition to the rice production, this means that this is like a wealth for poor people. And in Egypt, this system, like I said, is widely practiced in the Delta region. And that's why climate change, if it happens, it will have a tremendous impact, not only on agriculture, on rice, but also on fish. Anyway, The crops, like I said, tilapia and catfish and carps are major crops. And if you look at this pie, the production of rice is about 15,000 tons, which is only 1% of the total production. Was per seed. The amount itself is quite significant, 15,000, but it was larger before. This can give you an idea about the trend in aquaculture and in land grown with rice. In 2008 and before, the production was larger than now. So it's declined, but it's still quite significant. Now, another system which is an innovation, an Egyptian innovation, growing wheat, growing fish in wheat fields. After wheat harvesting, the ponds remain without any use for about 5 months during winter time, where there's no aquaculture grown. So farmers in some areas, especially in Kafr Sheikh, the governorate, are sowing wheat seeds in these empty ponds, and then without any water use, without any fertilization, without anything, just they throw the seeds and wait for about 4 or 5 months, and then they harvest the wheat, as you see in the photos. And the harvest is about 8 metric ton per hectare, which is a very significant amount of wheat in addition to the crop. Keeping in mind the ponds were empty during winter time, so this is like a value added or a value addition to the ponds. And this is, I believe, is only in Egypt. I haven't heard that any other country is applying or adopting wheat fish farming. Vegetables, in many small-scale farmers in Egypt, they grow vegetables for their own use, for family subsistence, like the one in you see now. The farmers growing eggplants, tomatoes, cucumber, and other okra. And from the water, from the pond, he is growing tilapia inside. And this is also helps significantly in self-sufficiency, and improve the health status of the farmers. And even they can sell the rest of the production to the local markets. Aquaponics is also another integrated system, which is growing fish with other crops in an integrated system. And the plants use the waste of the fish, and they can be used like a biological filter. And also this is an environmentally friendly system. The two photos on the right are from Egypt. The one in the left is from South Africa, which is called vertical integrated system developed by aquaponic system developed by one of the South African companies. This system is starting to gain momentum in Egypt, actually. We have some commercial companies now are growing fish in aquaponic system. In the desert, integrated aquaculture in the desert. Like a desert agriculture in Egypt has expanded dramatically over the past decades. And like I mentioned earlier, Egypt is mostly desert. So growing vegetables and other crops is essential for those who are inhabiting the desert areas. And to reduce the cost, farmers started thinking of integrating fish with other land crops. And that's why fish and land crops are developing dramatically over the last years, like I said. They can grow brackish water crops with fish, or even freshwater crops, like we will see in the photos coming. Now, this is in Sinai, where there's a project called the Development Project of Sinai Inhibitors, Sinai communities, sorry. And they grow tilapia and other mullets and catfish in integration with crops like you see in the photos. And on the left, they are putting the tilapia seeds, tilapia fry, and eggplants and pepper and okra are being sold and being used in the local market. Even this is a very interesting example called Kiram Farm. This is one of the best, probably I can say, in the world, because it's an amazing integration. They grow tilapia in the pond, and the water from tilapia goes to catfish, and then goes to grow alfalfa clover, and which is used for sheep production, and then the waste of the sheep goes to produce biogas, which is used as an energy supply for the whole farm. So you have an amazing integration using each and every piece in the farm and without wasting anything. So this is just an explanation of what I've said. Come on. Again, this is in Sinai again. Some ponds was in some areas in Sinai growing plants and tilapia, and like you see, the ponds are lined with plastic sheets because the place is very drought and the water is not compacted. So it should be lined with plastic to avoid water seepage. They can also grow, like we will see now, they grow salt-tolerant plants, because in many places the water is brackish, the underground water is brackish, so they can grow a brackish water fish and then use this water for growing salt-tolerant plants like Salicornia, and it's used for feeding sheep and also for making bread. That's an amazing example, actually. Again, Ethiopia on the road, not only in Egypt, but also Ethiopia. This is like an integrated aquaculture, vocational and entrepreneurship training center recently built in Ethiopia. And it's expected that this center will be like a nucleus for spreading this philosophical integrated system in the country and probably in the region around. An amazing example in Algeria, where a private company called Pescado Douladuna in an Algerian desert. And this company is growing tilapia and catfish, and they are growing plants. And if you look at the photo on the right at the top, the product is processed, the fish, catfish mainly, is processed and sold to the local markets. So again, this is like a value added. This is an amazing example on the integration of fish with plants in Algeria. I'm speaking very fast just to meet the time. I don't know how much time, but I'm almost done. Now, the conclusion of this short presentation is aquaculture-agriculture integration is an excellent option of rational and responsible use of the already raised water scarcity in Egypt and in the rest of the MENA region, and also probably in the world, in face of the climate change that we are already facing and expected to face much more stronger. This system is economically feasible, like I mentioned. and environmentally friendly because no waste, everything is used. This system can enhance the livelihood and reduce the poverty in communities, especially in the desert, because like I said, rural households, rural families can consume the fish they produce and the vegetables they produce, the fruits they produce. So this will improve their health status and reduce the poverty. Finally, this system can also be successfully adopted in arid lands, like I said, where the water is more scarce and food production is quite limited. And I always end my talk and my talks with this. This is the book I authored, Tilapia Culture. The one on the left is the first edition published like 15 years ago, and the one on the right, which is just appeared last year. And in fact, the book contains a huge amount of information on the different tilapia culture systems, including almost half chapter on integration in Africa and Asia, especially, and Latin America. So that's my message today. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdel. That was quite a thought-provoking and quite interesting presentation.
Thank you.
I could see from the chat that there were a number of people, who have given various very positive comments, particularly on the use of waste to turn that into productive water for producing fish. There are a few questions that you will have a chance to respond to after the next presentation.
Sure.
So without taking much time, we'll move to the next item on our agenda. We are going to have a short video clip as an interlude to the next presentation.
الاستزراع المكثف في مجاري مائية داخل الحوض الترابي. فكرة النظام تقوم على ان انا بعمل دورة مياه داخل الحوض الترابي، وعشان اعمل دورة المياه بقسم الحوض لجزئين عن طريق جسر ترابي او حاجز بلاستيك. اللي معمول هنا حاجز بلاستيك لتسهيل العمل. داخل اللي هي الريسوي نفسها بنعمل تدفق للمياه. الهدف من التدفق العالي للمياه ان انا بتخلص من الفضلات الصلبة الناتجة عن تغذية الأسماك وبقايا الأعلاف، تخلص منها خارج المجاري المائية في منطقة تجميع الفضلات. والتخلص من الفضلات في منطقة تجميع الفضلات بيمكنني ان انا بتخلص منها عن طريق طرمبات شفط لخارج حوض الانتاج، وبالتالي بكون تخلصت من المخلفات الصلبة اللي عندي في الناتجة عن الاستزراع. بعد كده المية بتطلع من منطقة تجميع الفضلات للمنطقة المفتوحة في الحوض، بتتعرض للتهوية عشان تتخلص من الأمونيا وبتكتسب الأكسجين، وبترجع تاني المية دورتها تاخد المجاري المائية. فعندنا المياه تعتبر دورة مغلقة داخل الحوض الترابي.
وقد قامت جامعة أوبورن بالولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بتطوير نظام الاستزراع السمكي المكثف في مجاري مائية داخل الحوض، حيث تم اختباره في إنتاج القرموط الأمريكي وأسماك مبروك الحشائش في الصين. ويعد هذا الاختبار الأول لإنتاج البلطي في مصر والشرق الأوسط بقيادة المركز الدولي للأسماك.
So we are looking at this system as a system that will revolutionize the way aquaculture is being done in Egypt, and also it has a very big potential to be applicable in other countries as well in Africa. Right now we are talking about 1.2 million metric tons of fish that is produced from aquaculture. Now when we talk about triple that, we are talking about 3.6 million metric tons that can be produced just by shifting into this system.
ويتمتع نظام الاستزراع السمكي المكثف في مجاري مائية داخل الحوض بمميزات عديدة، إذ يمكن من تحقيق أقصى استفادة من الموارد المائية المتاحة وزيادة إنتاج الأسماك ذات الجودة العالية وتسهيل تسويق الأسماك الحية، إضافة إلى تطبيق إجراءات الأمان الحيوي وتقليل مخاطر الأمراض وتيسير أخذ عينات الأسماك وتدريجها وحصادها.
الحوض ده إن شاء الله يطلع إنتاج من 10 ل 12 طن مقارنة بالحوض الترابي التقليدي اللي جنبيه بيطلع 5 طن، يعني تقريبا بضاعف الإنتاج أكتر من مرتين من نفس الحوض في خلال 4 شهور فقط.
تعد هذه المرة الأولى التي يطبق فيها نموذج الاستزراع المكثف في مجاري مائية داخل الحوض بنجاح في مصر، وقد تم تعديل النظام خصيصاً ليتناسب مع ظروف المزارع في مصر، كما يفتح هذا النموذج آفاقاً جديدة للترويج للمزيد من النماذج المبتكرة لتكثيف إنتاج الأسماك هنا وفي القارة الإفريقية.
Thank you very much. That was quite interesting. Now, our next presentation is going to link to that video, and our next panelist is Dr. Ahmed Nasr-Allah. Dr. Allah is the country director, WorldFish in Egypt, and quite relevant is the coordinator of our project, the partnership with IFAD in the Advancing Climate Smart Aquaculture project. Sorry about that. Yes. Ahmed has over 30 years of professional experience in aquaculture. He is leading implementation, the implementation of the project, which I mentioned in Egypt, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, which he has done quite commendably over the past 2.5 years. He has experience as co-project leader for several other projects on such as sustainable transformation of Egyptian aquaculture to market systems, what is abbreviated as STREAMS, youth employment in Aswan Governorate, both projects funded by SDC. Ahmed holds a master's degree in aquaculture management and planning from the University of Hull in the UK, and a PhD in aquaculture obtained from Egypt in 2010. He has several publications, about 60 articles, and in peer-reviewed papers, conference papers, and also technical reports and book chapters. Ahmed, please take the floor and take us through the next presentation on the IPRS system. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for your support and cooperation. And organizing this interesting event to talk about climate smart aquaculture technologies and the efficient system we work with together with you under ACLISAT and other activity. We're going to talk with you today about in-pond raceway system or improved pond production system. And this is a challenge. Next slide, please. This is a challenge to develop a new production system. Next. Why we need to develop improved production system, or why we need to upgrade our aquaculture production system. Please return to previous one. Globally, population is growing. If we see the previous slide showing that population of the world in 2050 will be around 10 billion. From the 10 billion, 2.5 of population will be in Africa. So this is a huge population. That means there is a more demand for food will come into Africa. Next slide. On the other hand, from the coming slide, we see that water resource in Africa will be limited by 2050. This is a recent publication published only last year, talking about fresh water availability, indicate by 2050 that most of Africa will have a shortage of water. So water available will be less than 1,000 meters per person per year in this country. So most of Africa, except some part in South Africa and West Africa, but all other countries will have some degree of water poverty. That's why we need to have efficient production system to meet the growing population. Next slide. If we see this, FAO statistic indicates that 50% of fish production coming from aquaculture and 50% from fisheries. If we look into fisheries catch, it's almost stable since then, more than 20 years ago, or even more, 25 years. So catch volume is stable. So the growth coming from aquaculture. So that means aquaculture, this is the only room to have food security. Following slide. Inbound Raceway system was developed in Auburn University, led by Professor Jesse Shabel. And the system is two type of system: floating system and fixed system. Floating system, this could be used in water reservoir area where there is no capability of drown it. So the system can produce fish without need to drain the reservoir. In the right hand, this is a fixed system which is in bond raceway to establish in production bonds, and this is fixed. And this have been, next slide, this have been moved from the state to China, and show the access number of in-bond raceway cell in China reached about 7,000 cell within 10 years or less. The in-bond raceway offers several advantages. First, it increases production of unit of land and water, especially productivity per water unit. It's easy to handle fish health and to manage fish health and to adopt or apply biosecurity measures, because you don't need to exchange water, you just recycle the water within your system. Third, it enables capture of nutrients, which is wasted from fish feed production, and this have a very good environmental aspects. Finally, we can produce a high quality product, which can meet production standards in all over the world. So next slide, please. It's showing the layout of IPRS technology. The in-bond raceway system we develop raceway within the bond, and the system allowing water to move only on one direction to recycle within the bond. So all the water goes through raceway, and after the raceway, water goes outside to open bond area to lose ammonia and absorb oxygen and return back to the system. Next slide. Okay, this slide showing some details the design of the system. If we look to the bottom, this is the inlet of the cell. From the left hand, there is air lift, which is pushing the water inside the cell to create water current. And this is the main tool which is used in the system to create water current inside the cell. So we develop like a river inside our bonds. So this natural river we develop, artificial river we will develop inside our bonds in the cell. So with this water current, fish waste are taken out of the system, and the current afford oxygen, sufficient oxygen to the fish. So fish are growing in very good healthy condition. Once the water get out from the cell to the quiescent zone, the water current speed goes down, so the solid waste, suspended solid settle down, and the water goes out in open bond area where ammonia could be evaporated and absorb oxygen from aeration unit and recycle back again. So we recycled the water inside our bonds. No need to flush water in and out from the bond as traditional aquaculture. And this is making a big change. As in traditional aquaculture, we need to flush plenty of water. Sometimes it goes up to 10% per day. With a huge aquaculture facility in many countries, there is the need for water exchange is too much. But with this system, we don't need to flush water. The principle of the system that we intensify production in 2% of bond volume. So the cell volume is 2% of the volume of the whole bonds. Here we talk about volume, not a surface area, because we can increase depths to 2 meter depths. We use continuous aeration to create water current inside the cell and move the waste out. The last point, this continuous aeration keeping our fish healthy and in very good condition. Next slide, please. Very healthy condition and growth attain high growth rate and not subject to stress. Cell could be constructed from concrete or it could be constructed from polyethylene. So the low-cost one, polyethylene, could be adopted where the land is not owned by us, so could go to low-cost system. But if we own the land and we have stable system, we can go construction. Cell size, which is commercially applied in China, it is around 5 meter wide, 22 meter long. When we brought this technology to Egypt, we decided to go to smaller size, 3 meter wide and 12 meter long, to test the system first. And bond system in Egypt is smaller, so we to fit with our bonds and to test it, and it's actually worked well, very well since 2017. Next slide, please. Okay, how we make a ratio of this slide showing example of how to make a ratio of cell volume to bond volume. If we have bond which have 6,000 meter cube, here we talk about not surface area with meter cube. We consider depth of water if we to calculate water cube. If the bond volume is 6,000 meter cube, the raceway volume is optimum is 150 meter cube. This raceway 150 meter cube could be two smaller one or one bigger one. Another example below, if the bond volume is 8,000 meter cube, the optimum cell volume is 200 meter cube, could be two cell or one cell. There is advantage and disadvantage of bigger cell. Bigger cell is economically to construct, but smaller cell is easy to manage and to not to reach a maximum carrying capacity in one time. So by the end, productivity, next slide, productivity per meter cube or per unit is higher. Next slide, please. The photos in right hand and up, this is the biggest IPRS farm we visited in China in 2016. This is 20 hectare farm. The farm has 52 cells. The cells are in the middle, just next to each other. 52 cells, each cell 5 meter wide and 22 meter long. The photos up showing a group of people, I was one of them, visited this facility and see how it works on commercial basis. The photo below on left, this is a small scale IPRS in Auburn, and where IPRS can be worked as well in 1,000 meter bond facility. So it could be scaled up or scaled down as the land area allowed. Next slide, please. Lift unit, this is the heart of the system. Where with using airlift unit, we are able to make a water current in a way within our cell, and this water current is a secret where the current provide oxygen and take the waste out of the cell. Air blower could be just over the airlift unit. This unit called airlift or white water unit. Air blower could be up or could be just fixed on bank and connected with the air tube, and the air comes from the air diffuser in the bottom. We see the bottom one. These air diffusers allow water, next slide, allow bubble of water goes up, and this bubble of water, when it goes up, find deflector hood which change the current. Next slide, please. And this photo is showing how the bubbles goes up. Bubble goes up to find deflectors, and the deflector changes the current and making very strong current inside the cell. This current could reach up to 10 centimeters per second, and this is the optimum current we're allowed to take the solid waste out. If you imagine this airlift can change water in the cell several times per hour. Next slide, please. So this is a huge water movement with less cost. So this is economically approach. And this some photos for the airlift unit operation in right hand, and this inside the cell in just before operation in the left hand bottom, and this aeration make fish avoiding stress, increasing stocking density, improved fish growth rate, and improved getting better FCR with as fish are not subject to stress. Next slide, please. Another very good intervention the system do is enabling capturing nutrients. So this is an important intervention we do as capture nutrients, enable us to take the waste out of the system. That means the carrying capacity of the system could be increased because of the of removing solid waste out of the system and less biological oxygen demand generated in system. Next slide, please. These tanks are for solid settling as the waste pumped out of the pond. This waste could be just flushed in a sediment tank like the one we have in the left, and the water overflow, clean water overflow to the drain or to other part of the ponds, and the solid settle down, and we can pump this solid and take it for as agriculture fertilizer. Next slide, please. This slide showing that could be polyethylene sheet just covering a wood stick inside the ponds, and this could be used for growing fish. So when the water level goes up, there is no pressure from both sides, so it's working very well and no problem at all. And we tested this already in Egypt since 2017 at work as well. Next slide, please. This slide showing the testing of water current inside the cell and how the water current could looks like. Actually, it's more stronger. This photos for initial work. So now we have a better water current even. So it could, which in improving oxygen and take solid waste out. Next slide, please. Fish could be stocked, or IPRS could be stocked with tilapia, with a stocking rate up to 150 to 250 fish per meter cube of the cell. Could be stocked with the catfish, could be stocked with rohu and carp species. So it works very well with several species. We just you change just initial size according to the market and expected gross rate, final market demand and the gross rate you have. But the target for tilapia could be up to 200 fish per meter cube in the size of the cell. Next slide, please. It is easy to manage to stock fish and to do partial harvest because all your fish is within the cell. You don't work with the whole pond area. You work with only cell, which could be between 50 meter cube up to 200 meter cube. So you work with a small area, it's easy to stock. Next slide, please. Feed management or feeding protocol. United States Soy Export Council recommend feeding protocol start with 36% protein and goes down to 30% protein. But from our practical experience, we see it's better to start with 36% protein feed up to 100 gram size. And after 100 gram size, work with 32% protein. Yes, we work with the high protein content feed, but fish are growing in fast growth rate. And we work with a shorter time. You could achieve market sizes in shorter time. So this is give you economical performance using this good quality feed. In this IPRS cell, we feed fish 3 to 4 times per day. And we just, as we use floating feed, we just give feed on stages. It could be demand feeder, it could be manual feed, it could be automatic feeders, but you give feed just on sequence, because if you throw all the feed and this is floating feed, just and once the feed will go outside the cell. So you give your seed feed in batch for 10 to 15 minutes. This is sufficient, and repeat this 3 to 4 times per day. It's better to work with extruded feed because this will give you a better growth and reduce waste in the system. Next slide, please. Water management. As we mentioned before, in this system, we don't flush water out of the pond the whole season. And even you could move from one season to other without flushing water outside. You just recycle the water within your bonds. Water goes out from the cell to find different direction inside your bonds. This direction could be a bank or could be a polyethylene wall, just to direct the water inside the cell and allow it to return back. So no water exchange during the season. Just compensate evaporation and seepage. It could be every 10 days. You add some water to compensate evaporation and seepage to maintain water level. Next slide, please. This chart showing, the one in the left showing oxygen curve, diurnal oxygen curve. Inside the cell, it ranges between minimum 5 and the maximum 7. So our fish is not stressed at all. Oxygen didn't go below 5. So fish are not stressed. And there is no oversaturation of oxygen. This means your fish are in healthy condition. And for this reason, growth curve and right hand indicate how fast the growth rate we can attain in our system. And you could achieve market size starting from fingerlings. You could achieve market size within 3.5 to maximum 4 months. Could be even then for 4 months to achieve market size you want. Next slide, please. Harvest and marketing. It is very easy to harvest and market this system because fish is collected or fish is reared in a small area. So it's easy to harvest or to do partial harvest even. And with this partial harvest, you could, if the market is not there, you do just partial harvest, sell some fish and keep the rest inside your cell for following days until the market improve. This is efficient way to work with harvest. And by the way, you could sell your fish alive because the fish coming from water, just transfer them to the track where they could move to the market alive with a good healthy condition and quality of the fish coming from this system, because waste is not remain with the fish inside the cell. All the time waste are pushed outside the cell by air current, water current, so the quality of the fish is wonderful. We're doing a lot of work under IPRS to do testing this quality even further, and a lot of work going on in this to prove the quality of the system. Next slide, please. With this, I would say thank you very much for your patience, and back to you, Dr. Richard, for Q&A.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, for the very nice presentation of the IPR system. I'm sure we are going to have some questions, and you'll have a chance maybe to clarify some of the issues. But I could see that from the reactions that many participants have taken it quite positively. Now, I will want to take about 4 minutes to get one additional experience, not a presentation, but a field experience from one of the countries where we are working in Ethiopia. And one of our partners will give us a very brief rejoinder on the integrated aquaculture-agriculture system. So, Dr. Minyalet from Ethiopia, please take the floor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. So I'll be talking about the integrated aquaculture-agriculture system, the trials, what's going on in Ethiopia. But before that, just to say something about the fish culture systems in Ethiopia. Actually, as a nation, the main operation, what is going on with the culture system is this culture-based capture fisheries, whereby we'll have these newly built reservoirs or dams or small water bodies. We normally stocked with Nile tilapia from the natural habitat, but recently from the number of hatcheries. So that kind of culture system is predominant and it's working, and most of these reservoirs or dams for irrigation for hydroponics are producing much more fish production, and it's a good job opportunity for the landless use and other communities in the locality. And other systems like cage is actually is ongoing, especially with some private business companies like African Sustainable Aquaculture. They are doing well, and it's actually on trial, and the Ministry of Agriculture is doing the extension. And all the other, like the aquaponics and other systems that are actually being tried. When I come to specifically to this, the smallholder, maybe earthen ponds, especially with small scales. Actually, it's a good opportunity for our farmers having ponds in their backyards, in their maybe households. So normally the extension system works with small size ponds, with earthen ponds usually. When there is a problem of leakage, we use the polyethylene lining, and sometimes concrete ponds also there, but usually earthen ponds are there with small size, actually 100 to 150 meters square. And it's a good opportunity maybe for the system to use the water effectively, efficiently. And it's good to convince the farmers whereby they can use the water for other purpose, for other integration purpose, and they like it. That's why rather than having the pond alone for fish production, we normally push the farmers to use the existing water, the fertilized water, for agriculture, other agriculture purposes. So it's a double standard, and there are trials at universities, at research centers, demonstrations in farmer training centers, even in the village, in the rural areas. So what I can say, because we cannot go because of the lack of input and the like for intensification, this kind of maybe intervention is really very important, as it has been mentioned by Professor. So fertilization is important, this kind of ponds, and then and this fertilization actually could be come from as just input, or it could be integrated. So when I come to the integration, the most common integration system in our context, so we usually mostly use Nile tilapia or Echinopsis integrated with horticulture crops like tomatoes, even onions, and I think these things have been tried under farmer conditions, under research conditions, and we found that's promising maybe system that could work in Ethiopian condition. The other thing, still we use other like even potatoes, cabbages, and the like with vegetables. And the other maybe thing that works well with integration is the poultry fish or fish poultry system. So commonly we will find this system whereby farmers are practicing it, and in more a bit maybe complications, there are trials like fish, poultry, horticulture, forage, and the forage is used for fattening or maybe for a dairy cow and the like. I think this more integration, like just with no waste, like the poultry droppings for the fish maybe fertilized one will be used for horticulture, and from that even the leftover water from the system could be also used for growing forages. And recently, because of the one project that's undertaken by Livestock and Fishery Development Sector project. I think they have clusters of fish ponds, 10 farmers, very small pond size, and they are using the water from the fish growing ponds for forage development. Nowadays, land is becoming scarce, and they have to use that water for forage development. And other systems like rice, fish, we have actually limited involvement. It is at the demonstration scale. We need to reshape the rice fields to maintain the fish in the system. Of course, this is something that could be done. So, in general, even though there are some problems, it has been found in this kind of integration is highly acceptable and promising, and most of the researchers who worked on this system trying to evaluate, they just got high returns, and they recommend for just being promoted and used as a system. So it's a good thing for in our context, and usually the most dominant among this is actually the fish vegetable type is highly favored by most of the farmers. So because they can get that vegetable, they can have this nutrition security, and it's a good opportunity for the smallholder farmers. And this can be done in pre-urban and urban areas. Of course, there are some challenges when we didn't follow very seriously. If there is some shortage in the inputs, and now some problems may occur. Otherwise, what we observed in our project in the third project, and there are the center that mentioned by Professor, and there are maybe farmers in clusters doing this. So it's a very important thing that should be promoted by the smallholder farmers in our context. I think that is all what I can say. If you have any questions, I'll just come back. Back to you, Dr. Richard.
Thank you very much for the experience from Ethiopia. Nice to know that Ethiopia is now incorporating fish farming and coming up with some of the climate smart aquaculture technologies and systems. And we are quite happy at IFAD to work with you in Ethiopia as we have started. Now we are in the Q&A session now. We have received some comments directly put on the chat. Unfortunately, participants are not able to directly raise questions by voice, but we have received your comments, and I will take the chance to bring some of them up with the panelists so they can respond. Now, the first one is an issue that seems to cut across. Dr. Ahmed and the two presenters have made very good presentation. But there's the issue that is coming of the cost, the issue of feasibility, especially in the small scale sector, how we can make some of these technologies, especially IPRS, to fit within the model of a smallholder farm environment. And also in some of the rural areas, for instance, in one of the countries where we also are working in Eritrea, where possibly we might not be able to access electricity in the rural areas. So how would we adapt such some of these technologies to support the low income groups, and also in especially in the areas where electricity might not be immediately available? So Ahmed, I'll give you a chance to respond to that, and also then we can also have Professor Abdel may be also commenting on that aspect on the IAA side.
Okay, thank you, Richard. For the inbound raceway technology, we already in Abasa using solar system to operate the air blower in our IPRS unit. Every day now there is improvement of solar system technology, and there is the water pumps now technology is much better than before. So the startup or energy requirement for pump is less, and the efficiency of solar system is
Dr. Ahmed, could you put your video on when you are talking, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the solar system is working well in operating air blower, and we testing this already in Abasa, and whoever come to Abasa will see how the solar system works to operate air blower unit. And this is the first. The second, with the IPRS, we can go down up to 1,000 meter water volume area for inbound raceway technology. Smaller than this need some further discussion, but with 1,000 meter we can go for something like this, and it could be scaled up and down. This is the advantage of IPRS. It could be scaled up and down. The third point of IPRS is that elimination of waste or taking waste out of the system could keep the water body clean as long as possible. This is a very important point, and this, if we manage to do something like this in Eritrea, you could grow fish in water reservoir with minimum impact on this other water user, because sometimes water reservoir have other water user. People use it for agriculture, people for animal drink, for. So you need to maintain water quality for other users. So this could be very good option to produce fish from these water reservoirs. Back to you.
Thank you. Professor Abdel, would you also comment on some of the technologies that I see there was some communication maybe which you have tried to respond to directly on the chat, but maybe for the benefit of everyone, you could comment on some of the technologies on their feasibility in the small scale sector.
Yes, I received like 7 questions. One is saying that is Kiram feasible at small scale level? No, Kiram is a huge company in Egypt, and it's been working like for 20 years. So they have, learned from the earlier mistakes, and everything now is settled. And like I said, it's multi-cropping system. So for small scale beginners, I don't suggest or recommend that you start with this, high level. You can start with very simple pioneer pilot infrastructure. Simply, you have fish pond, you have reservoir for agriculture, and raise the fish like Dr. Ahmed just said inside. And then you can, when you grow up, you can add other units to make it more beneficial and more environmentally friendly, like I said. Keeping in mind that for this type of integration, whether it's an aquaponic or desert integration, fish farming is generally intensive because you have to grow, quite a good number of fish per unit water volume in order to be more profitable. So electricity, gas, gasoline, feed, these are the inputs that should be available because you have to feed the fish a good quality feed in order to reduce the pollution and other environmental sequences and to have good growth. So this should be taken or kept into consideration while applying these systems. But for Kiram, no, you cannot start like Kiram, but you can start at smaller scale. One question also is saying, are integrated system being adopted by farmers rapidly or not? Why or why not? I did not understand the question very well, but I feel that integration, at least in Egypt, is not going fast enough to meet the demand or to meet the fast development of aquaculture. Probably because of the extension is not, appropriate. Probably most of the farmers are not familiar with that system. They need to be educated about that. Maybe the seeds, the fish fry or fish larvae are not available. And in fact, in Egypt, for the rice fish integration, carp is the major fish crop, and the government used to supply the farmers with the seeds for free in the past. I don't know if they do that now or not. But I think now the availability of seed is shrinking or decreasing, maybe. So I don't think that the adoption of this system is fast enough. It should be escalated at faster scale. And Anis was asking whether why the fish rice fields decreased in Egypt. That's correct. It decreased over the past few years. And I have asked this question to myself and to the others. Why the production was 35,000 tons 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and now it's 15,000, almost 50% decline. I think the water availability is probably a reason. The land allocated for rice production is oscillating between decrease and increase, with a trend of decreasing during the past few years. And all of us know the problem, the issue of water scarcity and the future of the Nile water to Egypt. Also, probably the seeds, like I said, it's not available at a larger scale. Maybe also the extension. So these could be reasons, but we should. I think we should talk with the authority and see why this has been declining, and how can we resume, how can we retain this growth rate to increase fish production in rice fields. There's also another question, Anis also asked this question, how to control the pollution in ponds when chemicals are used. In fact, for aquaponic and for rice, I would suggest or assume that there's no pollution, because for aquaponic they use well water. In the desert, in Sinai and in the West Desert, they use well water. So this is with a minimum levels of chemicals and pollution. And in rice, they grow fish in the rice, which is coming directly from the Nile. Also, it's not like a wastewater; it's an irrigation water with minimum levels of pollution. So I do not think there is. We should not worry very much about the pollution if we use aquaponic and desert agriculture, aquaculture, and rice field agriculture. That's my response. The last one was, in fact, I replied on the chat, do rice fish and wheat fish go side by side in the same field? No. Like I said, rice fish is grown during summer months in Egypt, between like April, May, June until September, October, until they harvest the rice. But for the wheat is a winter crop. In Egypt, they grow wheat during like September, November until March, April, early May, something like this. So during this time, after harvesting the fish, because in Egypt the water temperature is getting very low during the winter, from December until like February, for example. In this case, tilapia cannot eat. We cannot feed them. So the ponds remain empty. And so after harvesting the wheat, they like I said, they sow the seeds of the wheat seeds to grow without any intervention, without any water, without any fertilizer, and then they harvest it in May, or yes, generally in May. So they do not go side by side, because each crop is grown in a different cycle, in different months. So these are the questions raised to me. I don't know if there's any other question or not, but this is what I got. And back to you, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you very much for responding to the questions quite comprehensively. I have two other questions, I think. The rest maybe will respond in the chat. So now the first one, I think it should be Ahmed, but probably you might also have an input in it. So there was a question where we are using agrochemicals to grow vegetables, and this is integrated with the fish production. How do you manage pollution in such a situation? So that was the question. And then maybe linked to that, there's also a question on what is, let me just read what it says. What is the most climate smart way of dealing with scales and gut of fish, the gutting? So how do you, what's the best way of dealing with that adds value to the production system and minimizing pollution?
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me start from the one where we use agrochemical and integration fish rice together, or fish vegetable together with agrochemical. This is a quite sensitive point, and we need to be very careful when there is a use in chemical, because this chemical can affect on fish. So good manager could understand if for instance, you need to use some chemicals, not to stock the fish before using the chemicals. Give sometimes full clearance of chemicals. This is in large scale or ponds. But when we talk about aquaponics, nutrient is giving in small doses. So this could be managed in efficient ways. We consider nutrients coming from fish and how much nutrients required from the plants, and make compensation of missed nutrients. So this works well with aquaponics, and with this aquaponics product now is sold as organic product. So the product is high quality product, and there is a good market as organic crops, and also this provide opportunity during the COVID situation, where production of transformation of food, transferring food was difficult to bring food and logistic transport food. So system like aquaponics was the best way or best approach to afford food in case of crisis with logistic and transportation and nutrient balance. There was a question about the scaling of guts and scale. Using good quality feed, less waste generated by fish, and improving nutrient utilization of the feed used. So this is very important to use a good quality feed. Second, the waste generated from the gut and the cleaning should be treated well to avoid any impact on the surrounding environment from degutting and the cleaning process. This is my understanding of the point, how it looks like.
Thank you. Now, I think I would want to stop there because we are almost coming to the end of our session. Let me take this chance to very heartily thank our panelists, Professor Abdel-Fattah, Said, and Dr. Ahmed Nasr-Allah. You have been quite great, and I think you have presented the topics quite ably, and I could see, from the chat that the participants really engaged and benefited from them. I can see a lot of positive responses. Fellow participants, let me take this chance also to thank you very much for being active and for joining us in this, our first session of the work that IFAD is doing together with the WorldFish and other partners. The session has been attended by quite a number of, the audience has been quite large. At one point, I think we were reaching 200 participants from almost 30 countries across the world. I could see we have people from many different countries, Nigeria, Zambia, Kenya, Egypt, Malawi, Malaysia, Indonesia, Mozambique, Ghana, Sudan, India, Macedonia, West Indies, Cameroon, Peru, Bangladesh, South Africa, Russia, from the Caribbean, Benin, Lebanon, Mexico, and maybe many others that I was not able to pick up. So thank you very much. I could also see a number of colleagues we have worked with in the past in different areas. Thank you very much for joining. I think it has been quite a useful session. Some of the key points that we see, the first one, is the need really to keep our up with the knowledge in terms of climate change adaptation. We see that there are still a lot of opportunities. We are really just at the surface of finding the right, all the solutions that we need. So there's need for innovations. Definitely, we need to do more in terms of integrating our production systems, integrating aquaculture and agriculture. We can see there are a lot of opportunities and several, approaches and technologies that are coming up. The issue of efficient use of water, including wastewater, is something that we have to pick up as something that we can't run away from, especially in the face of the changing climate of a lot of uncertainties, reducing rainfall, reducing water sources. So it's something that we can't run away from. And then the better use of energy sources. I think we have to give a lot of attention to renewable energy, especially the use of solar. And as we go along, we really need, to build our technology and our technologies around communities. The need for climate change adaptation strategies really to be human-centered. So really thinking about how to make these technologies and approaches in a way that are going to be taken up by the communities that are affected by the changing climate. With that, let me take this chance to thank everyone, the organizers of the webinar, our partners. Thank you very much for the work we are doing together. And we hope this was the first webinar. We are looking forward to organizing others from our other activities that we are doing across the world with WorldFish and other partners. So thank you very much, and wish you good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you.